Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 live stream for the Bermuda Championship. Gonna make sure you're ready for all of your exposure tomorrow, whether it's over there on the Showdown side or for props on Underdog prize picks. Gonna cover all of that for you, as well as a weather report, any of your questions down there in the live chat, and anything in between out there on either angle. So strap in. Hopefully you're ready to talk some golf out there for tomorrow. So first off, hopefully you're having a great night out there. Say hi when you guys get down there into live chat. If you're watching this on replay, we still love you guys stopping by out there as well. Best of luck out there with all of your exposure, and let's go ahead and dive on in. First off, with our sponsor out here with the live stream, which of course is the Ship It Nation, a great all-encompassing DFS site out there that you can get for all of your different fantasy sports. So if you're somebody that plays golf, football, and then ventures outside of that with sports like a basketball, NASCAR, UFC, whatever the case may be, you can see all the different sports that they have covered over there under the Ship It Nation website. And the best part about it is that you're not going to get priced to death out there on every single sport. They have an all-encompassing membership over there that includes all of those sports under one membership for a very reasonable price. So obviously partner here with the channel. So if you use code Luke10, that is going to give you a 10% discount off any membership there. It's also going to help support the channel here too. So make sure to check them out. A great partner over there, and great website out there for a lot of that DFS info. But in terms of what we're looking at out there for our round 2 golf exposure, I think we have a little bit of an edge out there for our Showdown slate. So in terms of what we saw today, the morning played a lot easier than the afternoon, and particularly towards what we saw towards the end of the afternoon wave today. The winds really started to kick up the last 3 or so hours, and you saw the scoring average balloon. In fact, at one point, the scoring average in the PM was a little bit easier than what you had in the morning, but with the winds getting a little bit more significant, you saw that scoring average reflect that. And I think what you're going to see out there for tomorrow is that most of these forecasts, and what I'm going to do here just to make it super easy to look at all the forecasts at once, is that 4 out of the 5 models for tomorrow are calling for it to be a little bit calmer in the morning. So it might not be a massive edge between morning and afternoon, but with the fact that it does, and we'll get into all the models here in a second, because it does look a little bit calmer in the morning, and because they may have potentially softer greens as well, I think that could lead to a bit of a showdown edge out there between AM and PM waves. So if we take a look at the models, you'll see this GFS at the top. It starts right around 8-10 miles an hour, gets closer to 11 to 12 for the rest of the day. ECM model is the one model I would say that looks relatively flat across the entire day, but the rest of these icons starts at 8-9 miles an hour, gets closer to 11 to 14 in the PM wave. Medio blue is in that 9 to 10 mile an hour range, gets to 12-13 there by the afternoon. And then the HRDPS down there at the bottom is probably the one with the smallest difference out there, kind of like what you have there with the ECM that was flat. But it goes from like 11 over there in the morning out to like 12 miles an hour in the afternoon. Now, if you take a look at the wind gusts, the sustained gust, or I should say the max gust, they get a little bit more significant there in the PM wave on this HRDPS model. So in 4 of the 5 models, I'm willing to say that because of the gusts getting stronger in the PM wave down there, I'll say that the AM wave could be getting the better side of conditions. And because they got some rain during play today, it is going to be batshit soft out there tomorrow morning. And this point, what was it, like a 0.46 shot difference out there for round 1 could be the same thing out there for round 2. And if that ends up being the case, for your full round stuff, that's going to make it play straight up, which would be pretty fair out there for every single wave. But a half a stroke difference isn't something that you can ignore out there in Showdown. And while it was only a half a stroke out there for round number 1, perhaps it could be a little bit more significant out there for round 2. The evidence for that, I would say the argument for that being the case would be that in the PM wave, before the winds really started to kick up, it was playing a little bit calmer. It was also soft after some of the morning rain that came through. It was playing to like a 0.7 to 0.9 under par scoring average. If it really does kick up and it's like 9-day difference between morning and afternoon, like at least 3 of the 5 models we're calling for, that could be a larger than half a stroke difference, because only the last like 3 hours of the PM wave is difficult today, right? If it's going to be all 4 or 5 hours that is more significantly difficult than the morning wave, then maybe it's like a 0.75 shot difference. So it's hard to say how, these weather splits are going to look beforehand, but based on the weather forecast scenario here, I would say that leaning towards the AM wave starters is a fair way to go out there and play your round 2 showdown lineup. So you'll see that with my exposure. I'm only going after some of those morning wave starters, partially because that's really the only edge we have out here for showdown. There's no shots gained metrics this week, so we can't even look at shots gained approach stats. Closest thing to that would be looking at green regulation stuff, which is wonky over there on the tracking apps. So if we don't have much to look into, I mean, we've got game theory, we've got ownership that is always going to be there for us. We're always going to be able to use that to some sort of extent. But when we don't have the shots gained metrics to try and identify poppers with their approach play, any sort of weather edge that I can find, I'm going to go out there and lean into. So that's what I got from the weather angle. Let me go ahead and bring up our DFS sheet now, and we'll talk through a few of my top plays on the slate to give you an idea of what I'm looking for in players. And if you happen to agree with any of these takes, I guess feel free to go ahead and mix them into lineups. But this is more so to give you a peek inside my process, right? To show you what I'm looking for in players, to give you a few little nuggets out there in your own process to maybe go out there and implement yourself. So we'll talk through a few of the guys that I wanted to highlight here in the live stream. And I guess the disclaimer out there, right? These aren't guys that I'm locking, right? This is part of a much larger player pool. And the guys that we're talking up here are far from the only players that I'm getting to. So a lot of this is going to be blacked out. This is, of course, the spreadsheet that I post there for my Patreon members. To join that, link in the description of the live stream to go out there and check that out. But the reason why I selected these players was to paint a story, was to show you what I'm looking for in players. And they were all thought out well ahead of time. So there's definitely, just take that away from it, right? The reasoning more so than the actual names that we go through. What's going on, Jordan? Hopefully you're having a solid Thursday night. We've got some football, so I tried to time it up out there before Thursday night football, and everyone was going to be super busy. So yeah, go ahead, say hi when you guys get down here to the live chat, and let's get on after it. If you have any specific players you want to take on, go ahead, throw those down in chat. We're going to be rather quick with this player pool section, but I definitely want to hammer home some of the points that I had in mind. So we got a little bit of a weather edge. You're going to see that all these guys are AM wave starters. What you're also going to see is that they're all going to be relatively low-owned players. And you might say 16.9% on power, even this 18.1% of McNeely, you may say that that looks like high ownership. But when you compare him to some of the other guys around him, namely a Mackenzie Hughes, Ben Griffin, who are over 20% ownership, these are actually some of the more overlooked options out there towards the top end of the board. So I don't think you have to force in differentiation. If you want to play Mackenzie Hughes out of the AM wave, you can at slightly higher ownership. It's players like a Ben Griffin that are in the PM wave that I would be a little bit more hesitant about playing at that kind of ownership. So personally, I am going AM wave only out there for round 2. Without the shots gained metrics, I'm trying to do whatever I can to go out there and generate an edge for tomorrow. You can include a few PM wave starters, I would say, but I would try and stay away from the chalk. You don't want to be using a PM wave player in like half of your lineups. And if you're playing a guy up there in that 10K range, especially somebody over 20%, like you might have with a Ben Griffin, you're looking at 40 to maybe 50% of your lineups to get that leverage. So I think if you're playing guys out of the quote unquote bad wave, it might not be a massive advantage, but even if it is half a stroke advantage out there, I don't think you want to be taking guys in half your lineups out of the bad side of it. So I would say if you have some leverage pieces that you really like in the PM wave, you can probably sneak them into a few lineups, but I'd be a little bit more hesitant about these guys like a Ben Griffin. Maverick McNeely, he fits the eye test from what I saw in the broadcast today. So without shots gained metrics, we don't have that much to hone in on. What I like about Mav is that his ball striking looked well under control today. He had a few wedges that he didn't score on, which was a little bit atypical for him. He's usually pretty good from 125 yards and in, but downwind wedge shots that other guys were stiffing to 1 to 5 feet, he hit one of them short of the green, ended up making a bogey, or maybe he saved par. Either way, it was he didn't make birdie on one of the easiest holes out there on the golf course. He overshot one 10 yards over a green at one point, so obviously misjudged his ball flight and out there in the wind. He's not going to make that mistake all week. So with slightly calmer conditions in the morning, maybe that can get him back on track, because if it wasn't super windy, you'd have to think that he's hitting that ball to 5 to 10 feet, and his putter was rock solid the entire day. So -1 round, it's not like he played poorly. He had a better than average round, particularly in that PM wave, and he's a little bit lower owned than even a Sam Stevens, who's going to be over 20%, and then Hughes and Griffin, as I already mentioned before. Down here towards the bottom end of the 9K range, a Patrick Rogers is also getting quite a bit of attention. You probably could have guessed that with his -5 score. If there's one thing about ownership in round 2 Showdown, it congregates towards the guys that played really well. So a lot of people would have expected him to be popular. And yeah, he is a little bit over 20%, I believe, in my projections, or just about 20% at the very least. I've also got Justin Lowry here at $9,100. He's also going to be relatively chalky here in the 9K range. And considering that Rogers and Lauer are both going to be in the PM wave, I think that they're obvious cross-off spots in terms of their ownership. So with the weather, I think you can lean into that, as much or as little as you want to out there in your exposure. The game theory edge is also going to keep you off of these sort of players. So, if you're leaning into that weather edge whatsoever, you're probably not using these sort of options. A little bit further down, guys I'm getting to would be a Matthias Schmid. He's out there in the AM wave. He's a little bit higher owned than I would like, but comparatively, it's pretty reasonable. I've got a Glover at nearly 20%. I've got Lauer at just about the same ownership as a Matty Schmid. So when it's, when you look at it in comparison, when you put it into perspective compared to the guys around him, 16.2%, you can eat that with the 9K range player. If this was down there in the 7K range, we'd be having a completely different conversation about him as an obvious fade spot. If he was like a 7K range guy and like 16% owned, but it's Matty Schmid, who has really good form heading in. In fact, #1 in the field when it comes to recent form ranking, and he's on the right side of tee times, and he's a birdie maker. In fact, of players in this field, he's a top 10 player when it comes to birdie or better percentage. So I like birdie makers. I like guys on the right side of tee times. I like chalky guys that were just kind of okay out there round #1 that can hopefully get it into gear out there round 2, because he was higher owned than this out there for your DFS contest for main slate. And round 2, he's on the right side of things, is super cheap, $9,200. I would argue is an even better play out there for this format. Andrew Putnam at $9,000. He was a lot more popular than I thought he would be this week. I guess a few touts talked him up that I didn't see over there on Twitter or something. But $9,000, I think it's a good bounce back spot for him after he went out there and shot +2. He's only 10% owned, which down here in this top end of the 8K range, I guess bottom end of the 9K range, if we were going to be super technical about it, Putnam is one of the lower owned players that you can get to. So 10.3%, the form is decent heading in. I think that's why people were potentially looking at him as an outright. I don't think that the main slate exposure at that like 15 to 18% that he came in at in contest was worth taking, but 10% for Showdown on the right side of it, I'll take a sprinkle out there on a player that fits the style golf course. That's the other aspect to it. He's not the longest player off the tee, so you use him at these more positional golf courses. What's going on, John? He says, Luke for president. I would not be a great president because I would hate the job. It's way too stressful for me. So someone else for president. What's going on, Zach? He said, you feel naked without the shots gained stats. I do too. It's a shame. It impacts my prop process too. That's a huge part of what I'm looking at across the board. So I'm right there with you, which is a weird concept in itself. Do I have a preferred approach to assessing the bounce back candidates? So it's real tough, Zach. Part of it is just knowing that guys bounce back in golf. You're not going to have like the shots gained metrics to say like, oh, like he was just missing a bunch of putts unless you saw it out there on the broadcast. So if you were watching the broadcast, you may have picked up on a few guys that you could have done that with, but the broadcast was limited to like 2 or 3 groups. So you really only got to see like 9 golfers over the 3-hour window, which is just kind of an embarrassment out there from the PGA Tour. So it's tough. We don't have the shots gained metrics to work with. So for me, it's weather and then playing game theory. Just going after some of the lower owned players. Like I think Putnam's a great example. Seamus Power at the top 2. Like they were high owned for a reason this week. They kind of just like sucked out there today. I'll take a shot on them round 2. We don't have the stats to back it up, but that's the best that we have to work with. It's unfortunate, but it's our reality. And everyone has the same deck of cards to work with, right? So, it sucks for us, but everyone else has to deal with it too. So my advice would be you kind of got to blindly hope for bounce backs on guys and hope you get it right, because you just see it happen so much, right? Out here in Showdown, golf is a 4-letter word. It is chaotic. It is extremely variant round to round. I don't think that every guy that you're taking has to be somebody that played terribly round 1. Like I've got Schmidt, I've got McNeely at -1, right? They had better than average rounds. A lot of my player pool are guys that are under par after the first day, but know that guys like a Putnam, a Berger here at +2 could definitely turn it around out there for Friday. I've got Rico Hoey out there in a few lineups too. He's 12.4%, which isn't low owned by any means, but comparatively, like Vegas is higher owned, a Novak's higher owned, Bridgman, Echeverria are all higher owned than a Rico Hoey. I'll take Hoey. He's one of the highest birdie or better percentage players in this field. I'm out there in Showdown format. So he's a little bit of a sprayer off the tee. He's long. He likes to hit driver. This golf course has become a little bit more driver friendly over the last few years. The reasoning for that is that some of the hazards that weren't marked as penalties before, or penalty hazards, are now marked as lateral hazards. Red hazards out there. The best example, I think, is hole number, it's 14 or 15. One of those two, don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but the hedges down the right side used to be lost ball if you hit it in there. So people just didn't hit driver because you don't take on that risk on the PGA Tour. You just hit your iron out there. It's a scoreable hole from there. You can still easily make birdie. But now that they have it as the red stake, people are taking driver around this golf course, and it's not just on that hole. They've done it in a few other spots around this golf course. So it's unfortunate that we don't get to see the shots gained data. We don't get to see where they've made some of these changes, but I think it makes guys like Hoey that are more driver heavy players, Cam Champ, guys that are elite guys off the tee, a little bit more live here from the Showdown perspective. So I'm going to play Hoey. He's already a guy that makes a ton of birdies, and he's a little bit lower owned than some of the guys that are like -3, -4 around him. Down in the 7K range, Ben Coles at $7,600 is the perfect kind of guy that I'm sprinkling on. I don't love Wesley Bryan, for example. He's going to be well over 10% ownership, or even like a Haynes Springer, who's higher owned out there than Ben Coles. I'd rather take Coles, who before the fall swing was playing some beautiful golf. Hasn't played a ton this fall, but when he has, it hasn't been his best stuff. So for a 4-round contest like main slate, definitely playing with fire if you used Ben Coles at this event. But in Showdown, where he only has to put it together for 18 holes, I kind of like a Ben Coles because he's just a high talent player. In this range, I'd say that he like far outshines the rest when it comes to form here in 2024. He's a good putter. You can see the long-term stuff on Ben Coles is very favorable. He's number 11 in the field. If you take a look at some of the longer-term stuff, that's why I'll take a shot on him at $7,600. Hisatune, terrible round 1. I bet him. I played him this week. Terrible performance out there today, but it's a good bounce back spot out there in the morning. You can throw some darts, hopefully, with those softened up greens. And from the long-term perspective, just like Ben Coles, one of the best plays that we had in the slate. Number 7 when it came to the course fit, and a good putter out there on Bermuda grass as well. We've also got David Skins here at just about 3% ownership, a player that I believe we talked about for the main slate. If not, I used him out there in my main slate lineups. He's $7,200, and he fits these shorter kind of tracks. He plays pretty well in the wind, which it'll still be pretty breezy out there. It's going to be a little bit less windy, but definitely a fresh breeze that you're going to have there for round 2. And David Skins on a soft course down at PGA National tore up a windy but soft PGA National. So has a track record of playing well in these kind of conditions, and he's only 3% owned. Also a really good putter on Bermuda. So if there's one thing I'm really looking for, it's guys that are either high birdie percentage players or good wind players. I think that having wind prowess is going to be important all week, all 4 rounds probably, depending on the forecast. Maybe it changes for Saturday, Sunday, but it still looks windy out there as of right now. And then Bermuda grass putting would be the last thing I'm looking for. And then just overall talent level. But those 3 things in particular are really what I'm honing in on. Next play is going to be Brandon Wu down here at $6,700. So he's 1.3% owned. And down here in the 6K range, I think I point him out to show you that there are a ton of guys that you can get infinite leverage on. If someone's going to be 1% owned, I mean, even if you took them in 3% of your lineups, like 1 out of 30, you're going to have leverage to the field right there. Now, you should be more aggressive about it. You should probably have at least 5% of any player in your player pool. That's normally my minimum exposure on any sort of plays, at least 5%. Some rare cases, I'll let a guy sneak into like 3 to 4% if it just makes my builds work or something like that over there on an optimizer. But Brandon Wu, he has a lot of upside at these kind of courses. He's not the longest player off the tee, but he's played well at some of the resort style golf courses. And AM Wave, really very aggressive player. He's an even par. He's got to make, a mark to go out there and make the cut. I'll play him at this kind of event. And then the last play we're going to go through here is maybe my favorite. He's last year's champion at this event. It's Camilo. I bet against him today, which actually paid off out there for a prop, but it was by the skin of our teeth because this guy looked like vintage Camilo for his last 12 holes. He was hitting wedge shots to like 5 to 10 feet on every hole. He made a couple of them to make it a real close sweat. But he had a huge mistake on the par 5. He nearly hit it into the water. He actually had to stand in the water to hit it. He had a few other mistakes where he 3-putted on 2 occasions. If it wasn't for him just getting in his own way, he could have easily shot like -5 in the really hard conditions this afternoon. So he was on the broadcast. He was one of the featured groups, so we got to see his round. That's how I know a lot of this. He's only 1.8% owned, and we know that he likes this golf course. I mean, he's won here before. If we take a look at the event history, let me see what he's done on top of that. He was $6,300. If memory serves me correctly. Yeah. So yeah, $6,300. He made his cut in all 4 stops here. So it was T54, T34, T55. So let's not act like it was anything substantial that he was doing at this event, but he made the cut in all 4 stops, which compared to his baseline over those 3 years is much better than every other event because he's been missing a lot more cuts than he's been making for the last 3-4 years on the PGA Tour. So I think that this is a course that just fits his eye. It seems like off the tee, he's really comfortable around this place. I can tell you from the broadcast, a lot of tee shots that he hit, put his head down, grab the tee within half a second after hitting the golf ball. You don't do that unless you have a really good mental map of where that ball is going to be landing. So I can tell you that from experience. I have a few golf courses that I can go on autopilot like that. And Camilo, that's normally his Achilles heel. He's normally not a very good off the tee player, and he looked very comfortable around that golf course. So he's AM Wave. The putter was holding him back, which I think has been his problem stat-wise in 2024. So it's not like it's like due to come back, but if there's a place for him to catch fire with the flat stick, it's where he was an absolute menace in 2023. So I'll take some Camilo lineups. He's only $6,400 as well. So you're getting a bunch of salary relief if you're going in that direction. And just like pretty much anyone down here, there are a few guys that are like 3-4% owned down here in the 6K range. But for the most part, like 95% of the 6K range are guys that are like 1.5% owned at the very most. So whether it's a Woo, whether it's going the whole way down here to a Camilo, if you're going to use them in 5 to 10% of lineups, you're going to have a ton of leverage right there to the rest of the field. So I like those kind of plays down here to offset some ownership towards the top. And so if you like yourself some Mackenzie Hughes because he's AM Wave, who else is chalky in AM Wave? A Johnny Vegas, that sort of player out there in lineups, you can make it work if you use a player like that in the 6K range. So that's what I'll say about the player pool. Hopefully it gives you an idea of some of the guys that I'm getting to. Let me see if there's any questions that we need to touch on before we do some lineup construction, and then we'll go through some props as well. What's going on, Phil? Hopefully you're having a solid night. Will Brendan Todd make the cut? I don't have a crystal ball, so I couldn't tell you, man. But in terms of his starting position, he's currently at +2. And the cut line is even par, so he's 2 shots off of that. Certainly possible. I'd put it at like a, 40, maybe 50% chance he goes out there and makes the cut. He is a top-tier player in this field, somebody you'd expect to gain strokes in a weak field event. So I don't know. He's not in a great spot. You'd rather him be -2 and feel really good about him making the cut. But yeah, I don't know, like 40, 50% chance. Let me see what Data Golf has. I can give you like a statistical breakdown if you look at Data Golf. Let me find him on his show. He's +2. You look around there. He's got a 43.1% chance per Data Golf. So they've got him right in that same kind of range as me, actually. So Yeah, hopefully it gives you an idea there, John. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk through some lineup construction stuff. So let me go ahead and bring that up over here on Draftkings, and we'll talk through what you need to be thinking about when putting together a lineup. So whether you're entering a large field GPP, a single entry, a smaller field GPP like a 2-3 max, you got to be thinking about ownership. And I would say like single entry, some of your like smaller field contests, you're maybe not thinking about ownership as much. But when you're in the large field GPP out there for round 2 showdown, I know it's smaller this time of year. Like we're not getting the best contest selection, obviously, here for these fall series events. But even in like a 2,000 entry contest, you've got to be thinking about leveraging the rest of the field. So that's why if you're going to use a Mackenzie Hughes, especially if your second man in is going to be somebody that's over 15% like a Johnny Vegas, you're really going to have to start to think about your ownership with your third and fourth man in, because your fifth and sixth man in, you're probably not going to have issues with leverage. That 6K range, even that bottom into the 7K range, there are a ton of guys that are sub 5%. But if you go chalk for your third and fourth man in, it's not so much that I'm worried that you're going to duplicate yourself because it's only like a 2,000 entry contest. It's more so that I'm worried that you're not going to have enough leverage to move up the board. Like you're going to have a guy go out there and have a really good day. And if he's 15, 20%, you're going to have issues actually moving up the leaderboard. So for example, if you went with this kind of a chalky start and down here in the 8K range, you also kept it chalky with like a Bridgman is going to be really relatively high owned, we'd say. Towards the top end of the 7K range, let's say you went with a Sig here at $7,900. He's also going to be chalky because he's there at T6. If you went with this kind of a core 4 to start, even if you offset it with make sure you don't duplicate yourself with your last 2 spots, there's not a bunch of reason to take this chalk up here because you're going to have a harder time moving up the leaderboard. Like where you're differentiating yourself, where you're actually going to win and lose the GPP, are down here with your bottom 2 players. And in this kind of lineup, I think this is something that a lot of people don't consider when they're going through the lineup construction is, do you really want to win and lose your GPP with an average salary of 73.5 remaining? Like, do you want to be winning and losing the contest with complete slapdick players? Like, if you're comfortable or you really like a diamond in the rough down here, I obviously am partial to a Hisatune. I think he could have a bounce back. I also think that David Skins, right, could be a player that you could take in lineups. Right, there are guys that I could theorize taking in this kind of lineup. You're not going to have as much leverage as you could have if you maybe just one, maybe even 2 of these chalky players. You went to, it doesn't have to be like a sub 5%er, but up here in that 8K range, if you just go a little bit lower with the ownership. So maybe it's an Andrew Putnam who's going to be the 10% owned. Maybe towards the top end of the 7K range, you dip down from the 8K range and try and get slightly lower ownership. You down here and you take like a, who did we talk up here? I guess a Skins, right? That sort of player. If you do that, you're going to have just such a better chance of actually moving up the board if your guys are shooting -4, -5 tomorrow. So this is especially relevant out there for the large field GPP, where you're trying to beat what might be 2,000 to 5,000 entries out there for tomorrow. It's not even as bad as it could be, right? Sometimes we have like 10 to 20,000 entry showdown contests, especially like when we get to prime season, which will be coming around here in the spring. Can't wait for it. It's going to be an absolute blast when we get that kind of golf back. But as of right now, you still have to consider ownership. You can't just be playing lineups without that out here in the fall. So consider that out there when you're building lineups. Let me see. Are we good on questions? Are there any advantages to picking golfers who will finish round 1 tomorrow? Probably not, just because they only have a few holes left, Phil. So I don't think there's going to be any sort of fatigue factor. So probably not. If they had like 6, 7 holes left, especially if they had like 9+ left, I'd be worried about it. But it's only because they ran out of daytime. So probably not, but definitely a fair question. That's for sure. Let's bring up some prop stuff now. So we've got the averages up here for PGA and the DP World Tour. I'll let you read through some of them, but the scoring average for Bermuda was about 2 shots harder than what we had last year. So a lot of that was the wind, particularly towards the end of today, which got pretty gnarly. Birdie average went down nearly an entire birdie per round, and the bogey average is where we saw the biggest jump. It went up almost a whole 2 bogeys per round. So this golf course is normally pretty easy to get up and down around. You normally don't miss a bunch of greens just because of how soft it plays and how calm the conditions can be at this golf course. and it played a little bit differently out there for round one. So with conditions still a little bit breezy out here for round two, I'll just bring up the one forecast here. You can see they've got it in that like 12 to 15 mile an hour range the entire day. I still think it's going to play harder than what we had last year, but probably a -1 scoring average. So it's just me doing my best to go out there, project what we're going to get for tomorrow. Obviously, I have a lot of experience with doing this, but if I had to put a number on it, it's say -1, something around a 70 scoring average. I don't know if this is correct, by the way. This should be a 70.87 scoring average. It's a par 71. So I think the scoring average out there for tomorrow, though, could be closer to 70, which is close to the number that we have right there. So a little bit of a mistypo. I'll have to update that over there on the Patreon sheet to account for that mistake that was just a boo-boo by me that I was doing earlier. Down here at the bottom, you can see the DP World Tour stuff. So just like the PGA Tour that played a little bit harder, the DP World Tour also played harder in round one. So it was a little bit windy out there for the first day, and you saw that reflected with scoring. So it was about a stroke and a half harder than what you had last year, and about a half a stroke to an entire stroke harder than what we've seen historically at this golf course. So birdie average went way down. It was like 4.6 per round last year. You can see it was 3.38 over there in round one. So conditions that were definitely a little bit stiffer than what we're used to seeing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up Prize Picks, see what we've got for a selection, because I haven't been able to peek the boards quite yet. But I do want to fully deep dive it. I do want to find a few props to enter for you guys. I know we have DP World Tour stuff that we can look through. They have them on Underdog. They also have those on Prize Picks. But I'm wondering about the PGA stuff. Did I skip past it? You may have. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we got PGA stuff and DP World Tour stuff over there. And then I'm assuming both over here as well. So yeah, it looks like both sports on both sites. So we're going to have full selection, which means we're also going to bring up all the sports books. So cheers. I've got a little Red Bull here to keep myself up. I've got some projections to do tonight. So we're going to take a Red Bull, get a little bit more productive out there with that. And then we'll bring up these sports books so we can do this shit. And then we want to bring up Caesars William Hill too. So Caesars William Hill is clutch for having the DP World Tour birdie stuff. They also have stuff we can look at for the PGA Tour birdies. So we'll bring that up. We've got FanDuel odds to look at, and it looks like all the sites have stuff posted. So that's another pleasant surprise. So no coverage. That aspect sucks. We don't have that to work with, but we've got odds posted quickly. We've got boards posted pretty promptly for us. So at least we've got that going. Of course, Zach, cheers and best of luck out there with your lineups. Let's find some value. So before I even look at the board, I want to see where the sports books have this price, because with the forecast, do you think they would make it a little bit easier? And based on what I'm seeing here, that's exactly what we have. So for example, Mackenzie Hughes is here at 68.5 strokes. He's -155 for the under. Somebody like him for round one, at least if my memory serves me correctly, he was like 69.5 and he was like -120 over. So they've clearly moved the board down. I already saw the projections over here. Like McNeely was like 67.5. I'm assuming a lot of this has been accounted for. So let me find McNeely, for example, which it doesn't look like he has a line over there on this. Let me see if he has anything over here on FanDuel, which he probably doesn't. They're usually pretty consistent from site to site with what they're offering, but sometimes Caesars gets a little bit wacky. So, okay, that's DP World Tour. Let's go over here to Bermuda for now. Haynes Springer. Yeah, so nothing posted over there for Mav McNeely. So he's at 67.5. You also have Seamus Power, who's AM Wave. The players that we have for comparison, let's scroll down a little bit further, I guess. They had something for Johnny Vegas. He's 67.5. He's about even money over here on DraftKings. What is he on FanDuel? He is also just about even money over there on the FanDuel side. So it looks like this board over here on Prize Picks, at least based on what we've seen so far, looks to be priced for the sportsbook odds. So just look at this. What is Camilo Villegas? So no odds, it looks like, over there for Camilo. Camilo, if he's at 68.5, he's getting that much respect from the sports books. Like, imagine how good a play he is out there in DFS when he's like at the same number as Johnny Vegas, right? Who's a 9K range golfer. You got Camilo getting that much respect out here from the books, and he's $6,400 out there in Showdown. So that's another reason out there to go out there and play that kind of player. Let's see. A lot of scrubs at lower strokes lines than I would think. Like Joseph Bramlett's at 68.5. He had a line on FanDuel, I believe. Yeah, so he's over here at 68.5. He's minus 120 over, so a little bit of a sprinkle on the over there. On DraftKings, he's minus 130 for the over, so a little bit more significant. And then over here on Caesars, he's minus 125. So every site a little bit different with their exposure there, but average odds would be minus 125 between those three. Okay, getting a good sense for what they've got here. Let me see if Underdog is the same thing as Prize Picks. That has been what they've done the last 3 months. So that's what I expect to see. Lauer's at 68. Is yet the same thing on Prize Picks. It's actually at 67.5 over here. That's crazy. Does he have a line? Yeah, no, actually, he does have a line. He's minus 155 for the under at that. It's crazy that he's at 67.5 on Prize Picks. That seems like a little bit of an overreaction. So a few differences in projection. So Ben Griffin looks like it just got ripped off the board. Let's see what they moved to that one to. Let's refresh it so we can actually see the latest projections. Any minute now, Underdog. I know my internet's not that bad, or at least I hope it's not that bad. Come on now. The UI for this site has just gone terrible ever since they implemented a lot of their changes, and it looks like that's what's happening there. All right, we'll go to Prize Picks since your website doesn't want to work, Underdog, but a lot of it looked the same. There are a few 0.5 differences. What I would say about conditions is that if you're going to take unders on players, I'd feel the most comfortable about taking morning wave players, just because I do think it'll be soft. You have some of the lower winds to take advantage of. If you're going to look for any fades, I guess you would try and force them in the PM wave just because it might get a little bit spicier with the wind. So in terms of trying to take advantage of the weather with props, that would be the main thing I would say with that. You don't have to follow that rule. Like if you find a PM guy that you think is value for the under on strokes, like by all means, you can still go out there and mix it in, but you could use it as like a tiebreaker. If you're looking between it, like a few props, like you like two guys for under and strokes, one's AM wave, one's PM wave, take the guy that's AM wave, right? If you can't choose who to take out there in your slip. So that's more so where you would incorporate that kind of thing. In terms of like leans that I like, I'm still trying to see like a lot of the guys I'd like to take for like an under 68.5 are down here at 67.5. So like, for example, Mav McNeely, if we had him at 68.5, I would be jumping up and down. Happy to go out there and bet that. But the players that we're actually getting are an Echeverria, who's PM wave, who's playing in the slightly harder side of things. If we're talking AM wave, it's Hoey here at 68.5. I'm just going to throw him into the shopping cart here just so that we know who we have to work with. A Johnny Vegas. Who else? I'm not going to take any of the guys like a Brian or Russell. They're just kind of a gimmick, given that neither one has status on the PGA Tour. You've got Springer at 16.5, but you're looking at lower tier players down here at this portion. So for guys that are fairly priced at 68.5 and that we have in the AM wave, it's just these two. And if we, expand our horizons a little bit out here to the guys at 68, I guess Berger we would include. I like Berger this week. He's actually one of my outright bets. So out of these three, my favorite would probably be Daniel Berger. The issue is these other two, like Hoey, Johnny Vegas, I don't want to say that they're like marginal, but they're not nearly as solid lanes as what you'd have there with a Daniel Berger. So I do want to look at some of the guys here at 68 that we could take with some push equity there. Do have to get to 67 strokes, though, to go out there and hit for us. So it would be Hughes, who played really well. Doug Gim, he's PM wave, though. You have a Novak, he's PM wave, so that's not the best. A Putnam's PM wave, but actually, he's AM wave, but he's a lower tier player. I kind of agree with him being at that kind of number. The scrubs I'll probably stay away from unless I'm looking for a fade. So the scrubs, by the way, would be anyone below like the Johnny Vegas, Rico Hoey here on the board. All these guys towards the top are like some of the studs, I would say, out there on the board. From like Wesley Bryan down, these guys, like I guess with the exception of like Bridgman. Bridgman's pretty good. we'll throw him out there. Like he's probably a stud in disguise. You get throw him towards the top. The rest of these guys though are scrubs for the most part. So if you're gonna do anything with these bottom tier players, I'd probably fade them, especially like Ryan Moore at 68.5. That seems a little low. Vince Whaley 68.5. Like that seems a little optimistic for those kind of players. Like those would be the kind of fades that I'd be looking at. So the birdie or better board, I want to look at that one a little bit deeper. 4.5 birdies on a legit birdie maker would be nice, but the kind of guys we're getting access to are the scrubs, like the guys I just pointed out, right? That are in normal field events would be most likely missing the cut week in, week out. By normal field events, I mean like outside of the fall swing that we've got going on right now. All of these guys are scrubs. So the only guys that we have that are legit players are all up there at 5 birdies, which just like the guys at 68 strokes, right? They got to shoot 67 to go under. Getting to 6 birdies is a completely different task than getting to 5. So I don't love the guys with a bunch of push equity. So as of what I'm seeing right now, the main lean, the one that I feel the best about would be this Daniel Berger prop, which I don't think we had odds on. Let me just double check on that. So no Daniel Berger odds to go out there and compare to. But I'm comfortable saying that he would be juiced under that, because if you have guys, who was the guy who was minus 155? Like Hughes was minus 155. Who was the other one? Justin Lauer, right? If he's going to be minus 155 for the under, Daniel Berger is a better player than Justin Lauer, should definitely be juiced towards the under. So AM wave like that. Let's try and look at some of the DP World Tour stuff too. So I looked at the weather before. So morning's going to be pretty calm over here in Dubai. This is on the golf course Shumaraya Golf Estates. You can see sub 5 miles an hour wind up until about 10 a.m. So if we were going to find somebody to attack, we could look for a morning starter. And I haven't double checked this quite yet, but let me see if the morning wave was easier round 1. I'm assuming it was. So no, actually PM wave was easier round 1. Let's see why. So it looks like temperature must have been the reasoning for that, because it looks like the winds might have been, they were 10, 11 miles an hour early, but they were also in that like 10 to 13 miles an hour in the afternoon, but it really heat up as the day went on. So that's strange. Maybe actually they did the tee times, I believe, based on your standing on the DP World Tour. So maybe it also had to do with that, but I would assume with lower winds. I mean, let's look at the forecast, right? It looks pretty warm. It's 77 degrees. You got sub 5 mile an hour winds. Let's look at the rest of them just to make sure. I'm assuming that the morning is going to be easier. I was assuming that we'd see that on there. Unfortunately, you don't always get what you want. So you can see these other models. They all look the same. So the ECM sub 5 icon, same thing. It's, white over here, which means calm. And then it gets, green over there on the right. Gets like pretty windy. It's the same thing on all 4 cases. So let me see if the European Tour, let me actually just bring up their website real quick, guys. Let me see if they have their forecast posted, because they're the ones I would trust the most on this. The overseas stuff over there on windy.com has been accurate most of the time, but they've had their moments where they've looked like complete idiots. Let's see, game's about to start, so we'll do this quickly here. I want to watch the game too. Thanks for the Indo and Brendan. Of course, Sean, I got you. Any other questions, let me know. Don't sleep on your boy Whaley. Yeah, I don't want to call like everyone there a scrub, right? So it's not like disrespectfully, but yeah, he's a good fall series kind of guy. He makes a bunch of birdies. He's got a good skill set. He's good off the tee. He's a good putter. So he kind of fits these golf courses. I would say, yeah, don't sleep on him. He's not terrible, that's for sure. Let's look at this. So this is the forecast for today. So we got Saturday, Sunday at the bottom. So this must be for Friday. Looks lower winds in the morning. Looks like a little bit stronger in the afternoon. That coincides with all the stuff that we saw on windy. And then the temperature, 27 degrees Celsius. I have no idea what that is in Fahrenheit. I don't know the equation to calculate it, or else I do it in my head. I'm really good at mental math. But based on the stuff that we saw on windy, it was like 80 degrees. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be probably favoring their early starters. So just looking at this leaderboard, let's see what that means, what that translates to. So the birdie average is historically like 4.5 when it's easy conditions. So you've got guys at 4.5, like a Rory, a Tyrrell Hatton, so some of the best players in the field. if it's going to play easier, you would think that would like play into their advantage, but they're late tee times. So they're 3:45 Eastern time tee times, which means it's going to be in the afternoon in Dubai. So they're not getting that kind of advantage. The guys that would be looking for to maybe be playing like a softer golf course, a Justin Rose at 12:20. Let me actually see what that would be in local time. That would be the kind of player that we could use there. So let me go over here to leaderboard and see when he's actually going off. So Justin Rose, who, by the way, he must have had a pretty shitty round number 1. He is going off at 9:20 local. So that's going to be right about here. He's going to have calm conditions for like his first 9 holes probably before it really starts to kick up. Where the rest of the field, it's going to be a lot windier. So I don't know, 3.5 birdies. Let me see what they have on Caesars. They may actually have a line posted for him over there. Draftkings, they're going to have stuff posted for strokes on the DP World Tour that we could potentially look at, but they don't have stuff posted for birdies. So let me cross-check over here on Caesars and see what they've got. I'm assuming he's going to be 4.5 birdies, but he's going to be juiced way under. That's what I'm assuming we're going to see. So you've got Billy Ho at 3.5, and he's minus 150 over. 4.5 for Tommy, and he's juiced way under. Adam Scott is minus 165 over at 3.5. And then who else? So Rory is minus 130 for the over at 4.5. I could see that. What is that? Why are we bringing up poker ads somehow? I guess I clicked that by my mistake. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that over there in the live stream. Let's see what we've got. So we don't have, so Adam Scott is posted, but he's up there at like 4. So we don't have some of the guys that are like minus 150, minus 160. But if they're going to have like Adam Scott at minus 160, some of the other guys minus 150 or more, you'd think Justin Rose would be at least like minus 130, minus 140 for the over. So I don't hate that one. I like Alex Fitzpatrick because he's a long player. He could take advantage of some of the par 5s. Yannick Paul is not an elite tier birdie maker. I don't think Paul Waring is either. So just because I don't know some of this off the top of my head, let's do the research together. So let's go to the birdie average and let's see where all 3 of those players stand. Justin Rose, we're not going to look at just because I know he doesn't have a big enough sample size. Let's look at Waring. So Waring is number 10 and he's at 4.38. So he's towards the top. Okay, he might be the move here. So Waring, Fitzpatrick, and then I guess we'll look at Rose for shits and gigs too. Alex Fitzpatrick is at 4.17, so he's respectable, number 28, but he is a little bit lower. And then Rose, I don't think he has a big enough sample size, but let's see. And he's there at number 94. So per the stats, our best bet might actually be Paul Waring. Unfortunately, he's got a super late tee time. He's one of the last groups because of how well he started this event. So, I was kind of hoping we could find somebody like him that was going off early. I guess if we were going to do that, the one guy we can do it with would be Justin Rose. Or you just say that Rory McIlroy is going to go Rory McIlroy. But I don't love any of these props. Let me see what we have for strokes, right? We didn't fully deep dive that quite yet. Let's see, anyone juiced heavily for the under. So, yeah, they have Fleetwood up there at 70. Shane Lowry is at 70.5 and juiced under. He's got a 2 o'clock tee time, so it's not early, but it's at least not super late. Let's see what else we have. So Neiman is minus 155 for his under. He's also got a slightly earlier tee time. Let me just look at the tee times because maybe that's a better way to look about this. Tommy Fleetwood's at 70. Honestly, that might not be the worst play. McIntyre would qualify. A Højgaard would. So let's see what we have with those two. A Rasmus, he's minus 130 over, actually. Okay, so we'll stay away from that. And then McIntyre is close to even money. So we'll cross-reference this with what they have over here in Caesars. Look at that. Neiman, minus 165. They really don't want you betting the under on Joaquin Neiman strokes, is what that's telling me with that minus 165. And then Rory is minus 150 for his under. What is he at? Yeah, he's down there at 69 strokes. That would have been a nice grab if we could have gotten that before a bump. So, if we're going through this, and who were some of the other? We had Rasmus. He was juiced over.
McKibben's definitely going to be juiced over if Rasmus was. Rasmus, one of the best players on the DP World Tour. I'm disappointed that they don't have a Thurston Lawrence prop, as he's got the most upside and the most motivation of anyone on the field, as he's the only one that can actually win the DP World Tour Championship other than Rory McIlroy, just based on like their actual point standing and all of that. It's a shame that you can't even play him. Maybe he already teed off. Maybe that's the issue, because it says live down there, so maybe that's the problem. But it's disappointing if that's not the case, if that's why he's not on there. Let me look at Norgard Muller. He's been on absolute heater. So if his odds, so yeah, he's here at minus 135 versus over at 70.5, but we can get him at 71 on Prize Picks. If I was going to take anything from the DP World Tour right now, it might be the Shane Lowry prop that I was looking at. He's got the 150 tee time, or it might be this Muller prop. The tee time is probably the only thing that's keeping me off of that, because if you take a look at his recent shots gained profile, it's just been top finish after top finish. So don't sleep on this kid. Super long off the tee. He's also a really good putter. I think you're going to see him on the PGA Tour. He's very likely to get that promotion, top 10 or 15 or whatever. They go out there and make it to the PGA Tour. And he's got a really good game that translates overseas. So I've been playing him a lot for props. I've had a really good hit rate on him because he's been on that heater lately. So yeah, I'd either go with that, maybe the over on wearing birdies if you're looking at that. Like, I think the birdie average, like being 3.6 something per round, Waring is a top 10 birdie maker on the DP World Tour. Like, I think that would make a whole lot of sense. Or even Rory McIlroy for over at 4.5. So for now, I'm going to leave it like this. I'm still going to do some more research, some more projections on my side, right? Compare them to the board, see where I have some value. But this Daniel Berger prop is almost certainly going to be something that I play. So you can mix and match with whatever props that you found, whether it's on the PGA side or over here for Eurogolf. The one thing I'll say about PGA is that it's a shame they have these guys as low as they do. Like, I could see 68 strokes on some of these guys, but 67.5 feels like overkill. Like, they've got to get to -4 to cover. That's just, it's tough in this weak of a field. Like, even like Lauer 67.5, like that, just, it feels way too low considering that these guys are mid-tier players at the very best out there on the PGA Tour. So I would be a little hesitant with some of the unders that you're playing, but conditions should be a little bit easier. So I think unders are definitely in play. Just, you got to be careful about it, right? You can't just like blindly play the board and go out there and make a profit, I would say. So that's what I've got for props. Let me see if there's any last second questions. And if not, we're going to hop on out of here. The wind is heavy here right now, dude. Yeah, it's been crazy. I'm down here in South Florida. It's windy down here too. So it must be something going on over the Atlantic. And the early sundown is tough for these events. So I think they're going to try and make the field a little bit smaller going forward, just to try and get in play. But it's tough when you've got the 5 p.m. sundown. That's just, pretty much hard to do in general. You're going to run Tommy Fleetwood. You just think you can't putt that bad again. Yeah, so I didn't watch it, so I don't have that from the eye test. But yeah, dude, if he was missing a whole bunch of putts, then you could be onto something. In fact, let's just take a look at his hole by hole stuff real quick. We can get a real quick taste for what he did there. Oh goodness, is it really be this difficult to see the leaderboard? Like, come on now. I just want to see what's going on. There we go. So he's going off early because he didn't play well, right? Where are you at, Fleetwood? So -1, and let's go through some of the putts that he missed. Hole 1, he missed from 13 feet. Okay. Hole number 3. Okay, that was a bogey, so let's not look at that. Oh, shit. Look at this one at 4. He missed from 7 feet. This hole, he missed from probably 20 feet. Yeah, so 17 feet. He missed from 20 feet. Let's see this one. He 3-putt for par. After reaching a par 5 and 2, he missed a 4-footer. Oh, my God. Yeah, I think I'm going to join you on this Tommy Fleetwood, bro. Because, between the front 9 alone, he already missed enough putts to make you frustrated. And I'm assuming the back 9 is probably going to have some more carnage based on what you were saying. 15 feet, that's a annoying miss. He made one from 4 feet. Let me see. What was his first birdie? 14 feet. So he made a good one there at hole 2 at least, right? Let's see some of the other ones here. It's 15 feet. He ended up missing. Bogey to par 5. It's hard to believe. Had to chip out, then made par. So his like only real made putt was saving a par. He hit that to like 25 feet, so we won't check that. What's this one? Like 20? Okay, 38 feet. You're probably not making that. And then the last hole, he made one from 5 feet. And he shot -1. So he kept it together despite all that shit. You know what? Yeah, if I was going to do anything, like we'll say for like the stream slip, it would probably be Fleetwood because he is going off at 1. So he's got an earlier tee time and 70 strokes. You've got push equity there. Yeah, I think that's probably the move. So I think that's sharp, dude. I'm right there with you. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got for the live stream. Want to watch this Thursday night football as I'm sure a lot of you guys are watching as well. Best of luck out there with all of your exposure out there for tomorrow. We're doing the same things out there for rounds 3 and 4. So go ahead, smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content when it drops. And let's go out there and have ourselves a Friday.